Welcome back to Thorough Capping, guys. To piggyback off my last video when I did my Saratoga recap, I had mentioned that I was going to make tomorrow and probably Tuesday experimental days with tweaking how I use the data a little bit, or how I obtain the data, I should say. Nothing's going to change in the factors that we're using for the most part, with the exception of the speed cumulative. And I went over that in the last video, and I'll go over it again here for those that didn't get a chance to see the last video. All I'm doing is I'm experimenting with some of these factors to see if we can get a better rate, hit rate, when it comes to some of the exotics. So we've been doing very well with finding value, enough value in the win column that we're able to finish ahead if we were to put. We used a $2 base on every horse that was 9-2 or better. Now tomorrow, I went with Thistledown. There's not a whole lot on Mondays to really go with. I mean, Thistledown. When I looked at these horses, it's almost like some of them don't even want an equine career. It's amazing. But here's the changes I made. What I did was, excuse me, barring any layoffs, I gave the horse 3 races back to draw a target rating from. So we go here. Instead of having to be forced to use the last race out, or by default the 2 races back in case the last race was a toss race. I had the freedom to look at 3 races, consider that evidence of recency, and use the best target rating from those 3 races instead of the last race out. So I might have got a 70 from the first race, but then there's a 75 somewhere down here in one of the 3. I used the 75 as the target rating. In this case of the one horse, 72, this is a 5.5 furlong race. So I drew this target rating from this race right here. I use a 102 as a standard for 5.5. That's 23. And then round that up to 5, that's 28. 28 from 100 to 72. Now, with the target buyer rating, most of the target buyer ratings came off of the same race that I got my target rating from. But I did look, and in my head figured out what the target ratings would be for the other 2 races that I didn't use, and I kind of added the target buyer in my head. If I was able to come up with a higher target buyer from another race, I used the target buyer from that race. So we have 2 elements here that not necessarily had to be from the same exact race. The same thing went for the final fraction. We might have had a target rating from the second race, but the first race back might have shown a better final fraction, so I drew this final fraction from that race. So really what I did was I used a sample size that was larger to make my 3 factors here, target buyer, and final fraction, to find them. The ability race, what I did was I did the same exact thing. I reached out to any race before that race that I used as the target, and I found what was going to be the ability race. Now, the other change I made, and again, these are experimental, instead of, for a speed cumulative, instead of adding the surface and the distance plus the 56 from the year 23 to the last out, what I did was I took the top buyer out of its last 3, or Briz, I should say, Briz figure, out of the last 3. And if the last race out was the highest, which, let's see if I can find one here, right here, 58, 54, 48, what I did was I found the average of the 2 highest. So 58 and 54, I used a 56 for this particular rating. I didn't go with the 58 as a way to represent the whole principle of exceeding ability and so forth. Okay, so let's take a look at what we came up with here. I'm not going to go back and forth from the past performances. I'm going to stick to our grid now for the remainder of the time. And first few races, we couldn't find much value at all. I mean, the first race has 5 horses. If we get a scratch in that race, it's going to be down to 4, and we're going to be in trouble there. But I tossed the 3 and the 4. And the other thing I want to go over real quick with you on the past performances is what indicators did I use to toss horses. Well, I went down, the very first thing I went down every single horse for the 8 races, and I drew underlines under any of the last 3 races where the horse showed a little bit of interest in the race. Okay? For example, we have 2 back here, 3 back. And if there were any horses that really did not show any interest early on in the last 3 or 4 most recent races, where there was a portion of the race where the horse, ran well, I tossed the horse. Okay? Now, I didn't come across this, but the only factor that would force me to not do that, if I had a string of serious higher class races, then I would have to probably reach back a little bit further to find something that was more similar to today, but that didn't happen, so I didn't have to worry about that. So if there was no interest, and I didn't count that first call there in that race, and this was 2022 anyway, and we actually have a 3-1 morning line on this horse, and I just tossed that. So here I'm tossing a potential second choice in this race, simply because all I have to look at is 22, and there was nothing impressive about 2022 for me to say, yeah, that horse does deserve to be 3-1 morning line odds. Okay, now we can go back to our grid. So we look at the first race. I look at the matrix side. I see dominance on the 5, both in the target and ability, and I see top target Briz 70.5. However, with the class drop, early speed on that 2 horse, and we'll take a look at that too. I know I said I wasn't going to bounce back, but for this case I will. We do have the only class dropper in the race, and I mean, he doesn't show necessarily like he needs the lead, but at the same time he looks like he will go after the lead in this race, and I think that this horse is going to be a horse that's going to try to get the front, and we have a drop down. He's the only drop down in the race. He is 6-5 morning line. I did add the morning line odds for only our horses that we selected, and that was requested by a viewer, Mike in New York City, and he had requested that instead of having to flip back and forth, that I use the horses' names and the the morning line odds. I met him halfway on that. I said I'll use the morning line odds, but I'm not going to take the time to type every horse's name in there. So I think this serves a good purpose. I don't need the morning line for all the horses, because once I've decided who my horses of contention are going to be, that's all I need to look at. I don't think we're going to draw any value out of races 1 or 2 from our horses. Now, the only chance would be maybe the 5 in this race. The 3 looks like a standout in race 2. So I don't know and the 6 horse field, especially if we get a scratch, I don't know if we're going to get the value. The other alternative would be in races like this to lower the bar as far as what value you're looking for. But I don't think I would play either of these races. Maybe I would try to find a way to hit off a cheap try in this race. Maybe put the 5 over top of the 3-6, over top of the other horses like the 1, 2, and 4, and hope that the race comes out that way. Maybe that's a $3 bet right there. That might return $25 for a 50-cent try. But other than that, I might sit on the sidelines and check these races out if I'm home. Race 3, we have another 5-horse field, barring any scratches. The 4 horse is a standout here. Morning line odds, even money, 84.6. The other thing would be Thistledown has an early pick 4 that starts in the first race. Maybe try to score something there, maybe with the 2-5 in the first race, single the 3, single the 1, and then race 4 we seem to be presented a little bit of value here. In the 1 horse, morning line 6-1, and the 6 horse 9-2. And as we've seen from the past, our top TC rating horse isn't always the horse that wins the race. Okay, in fact, our value has come from horses that were like 2nd or 3rd, or even 4th in the TC rating. So I mean, this might be a good sequence to go 2 by 1 by 1, and then maybe go 4 deep here. And if the chalk wins this one too, then just you're probably still going to profit because it's only going to be a cheap ticket. It's only a $4 ticket there, so it might be worth spending the $4 and maybe getting that 1 or even the 6 in leg 4, and maybe hit for $40-50. Okay, now we're starting to move into some value here. I skipped race 5. Race number 6, we have some opportunity for value here now. We have the 2 morning line favorites dominating the grid here, both on the matrix side and in the ratings. But then we also have a 6-1 shot, the 3 horse with the 3rd top rating. So that would be our potential play there for win in that race, the 3 horse. Okay, now we're getting some value as we move on. Race number 7, this 3 horse dominates the matrix side along with the 5. And they show up as the top 2 ratings, and they are respectively 6-1 and 5-1 morning line odds. Okay, and then we also have a 3rd horse, the 2 horse, who is our 4th choice as far as rating goes. He's got a 6-1 morning line on. Doesn't show much over here. So we have 3 horses here with potential value out of the 4 that we have selected. And 3 of the 4 right now are morning line 6-1, 6-1, 5-1. In right now a current 7 horse field. So that's telling me that probably 2 of these 3 horses are going to meet that 5-1 or 9-2 value, or whatever value you set. Remember, the lower odds value you set, the more horses that you're probably going to have to put your win money on. And I try to keep it to no more than 3. And my base units are usually $3 win bets. And then finally, the finale, race 8, number 8. The 6 horse here dominates both sides. And we have, looks like we may get value with the 5 horse, which is our 2nd choice in TC rating. So if you want to go and maybe copy these down, that way you don't have to refer to this video again. You could take a look and see how well they do, and better yet, see how well they do in exotics. Okay, keep an eye on the value and win value, but at the same time, see how well they do in the exotics. Like, do we get a 2-5? Even if it's a low paying exacta, are we going to get 2-5, or is one of these horses here that we tossed, or the 1 horse, going to jump in there and interrupt that exacta? Same thing with here. Hypothetically, if we were to box the 3, 5, 6, probably not going to pay much. But are we spot on here? Or are we missing something with the 1 and the 4? And over time, what that's going to tell you is, if we find that that's the trend, that we're hitting our winners, but at the same time we have the horses that we're leaving out coming in and disrupting the exotics, then the pattern could start potentially being something like 3, 5, 6 over 1, 4, or something on the lines of that. If you're playing exactas, at least these will point you to, most of the time, the top horse, or one of the 3 key horses to use. Same thing here. I mean, again, we're not going to get value here, but at the same time, does one of these 3 win the race, but yet the 1 or the 5 come in second? And start developing strategies where we are still tying in horses that aren't figuring in the grid. Because after that first place finisher, anything can happen in a race. I mean, some horses, some jockeys see that they have no chance of catching the leader, and they're not, all of a sudden they're not trying anymore. You got to think about the human factor, and then they get passed late by horses that didn't figure, and then we have exactas being ballooned up higher than they should be because you're getting horses that didn't figure for you finishing in second, and even more so third. Okay, race 4. We have we have 2 horses that are non-figurers. Keep an eye out for them. Does the 3 and the 5 come in the exacta tomorrow? Are we able to hit that exacta by playing these 4 horses? Now again, I had mentioned in the other video, well, how should we play these 4 horses without having to box them for $1 and spend $12 on the bet? Well, if you're playing live with like 3 minutes to post, take a look at your combinations with the 1, 2, the 4, and the 6, and set a value that you're looking for. If it's $18, $20, find out which combinations are paying that value or more, and just write them down. And with about a minute to post, keep an eye out as they're going in the gate or heading toward the gate. Check that will pay one more time. See if any of them drop below the threshold, and just play the combinations that are going to pay you what you're looking for. That way, if you do lose the race, you might have lost $6 total on exactas because you only played 3 combinations. But if it does hit, you spend $6, all of a sudden you might be getting a $35 exacta, and you just made $29 on the race. So, be smart when it comes to that. Don't just take these 4 selections and box them and spend $12 and have the 2 favorites come in, the 2 and the 4 here, and then the exacta pays $6.80, and you just lost $5.20 on the play. Bet your values to win, and bet your combinations that are paying what you're looking for or better in exactas. And then as you start to build your bankroll a little bit, play around with some trifectas a little bit, 50-cent tries. But to try to take advantage of when you get ahead, try to take advantage of that and try to stay ahead the best you can. Don't go one race, you're ahead now, $18, and then the next race you're spending $25 on the race, and you lose, now you're down $7. At the very least, you want to be down $12, or you want to be up 12 or up 10 if you lose the race. If you were up 18 the race before that, try to manage that money and not play every race like it's the last race of your life. All right. Any questions, comments? Throw them in the comment section. Throw them in the Discord if you're in, and we'll see how this little experiment goes. Thanks for tuning in.